morning, friends. Welcome to FCTV's Poetic License. This is May 2024, an open mic where we share original poetry, live music, prose. And my name is Donna Shear. I am your host. The suggested theme for tonight is serendipity. Doodah, serendipity. If you are a lifelong learner, FCTV offers extensive list of classes. To name a few of the free classes: Intro to Studio Production and Studio Camera Operation. We love our camera operators. The gallery at FCTV has a new show hanging in Monday through the month of June. The show is called Since Then, and the artist is Mimi Schlichter, who we will hear from for the first time tonight. This is a quote about her work. Realistic or abstract, her art is always personal, exquisitely presenting the ways in which she looks at the world, reveling in the miracles of God and basking in the unmatched beauty of a Cape Cod sky. How awesome. And I've had a chance to peek at some of the artwork. I'm very excited about it. This month on FCTV, Falmouth in Focus, there are many interesting pieces. The first one concerns the housing situation in Falmouth, which is an extremely hot topic right now, so it's worth looking into. Another piece is about the Shivricks Pond project and its new public park. There's also a step-by-step instructional by our producer, Tony Sedira. It's on how to install the FCT app on your Roku device. And you never see his face, but Tony has the most amazing voice. Now, I encourage you to become a member of the FCTV family. It's a fine way to support FCTV. A single membership is still only $35 annually. And this helps support a wonderful nonprofit organization that does a lot of good work in the community. And now, on with the show. Hello, performers. It's so nice to see you here tonight. Please repeat your name before you begin. We have two first-time performers, Melissa Goodwin and Mimi Schlichter. And when they each take the stage, let's be sure to give them a very warm welcome. It takes a little bit of bravery to come and be on live TV and share a part of yourself. So thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to start us off. I don't know about you, but it's important to me to understand what is happening in my life, especially if it has to do with medical conditions. As long as I can understand, my fears are released, and I can deal with whatever actually is. This poem is about a recent episode in my life, serendipitous, and it's called While I Was Not There. While I was not there, a witness was there. She heard the code over the loudspeaker. Respiratory emergency. She saw the orderlies run a mad dash down the hall like angels on fire, burning with purpose. She told me an air tube had been inserted to infuse my lungs with life. When I awoke to knives in every swallow, a lower lip bitten and bloated, every muscle in my face mimicking the beat of my heart. The procedure was supposed to be so easy. I was furious until the witness shared her narrative. My anger turned to gratitude for the chance to feel pain at all. And Sue, can you tell me who's up first on the list after me? Elaine Robinson, come on up, my friend. So nice to see you.
Nice to be here. Okay, my name is Elaine Robinson. Serendipity. Okay, that's a word I've heard a lot. Never really thought much about it. Had to look it up, actually. Okay, occurrence and development of events by chance in a happy or beneficial way. Okay, very interesting. So I recently had a little event that I thought may fit this theme. Before attending a performance of Shen Yun recently, a friend and myself had some time to wander around Providence Place. So we browsed and wandered into a shoe store. Now, the average person who goes into a shoe store usually comes out with a pair of shoes. Okay, I came out of the store with a stuffed guinea pig. And I was egged on by my 83-year-old friend. She offered to pay for half of it to purchase the stuffed guinea pig. So I brought this little fella home. He's very quiet. I call him Winston, named him, and he's very unassuming and just kind of very observant. He doesn't wake me up weeking at 5 a.m. to get me out of bed to feed him on my days off. He doesn't appear to be interested in treats or fresh hay. He seems to be very contemplative and listens to my babbling about work. He never criticizes my overreaction to chaos and irritating issues that I often encounter. He's definitely low maintenance. Stuffed toy guinea pigs are a rare find, and this quiet new addition to my menagerie of stuffed and live animals. He seems very content in his new home. He never mentions the shoe store, and he doesn't appear to have a shoe fetish. He's probably one of the more normal beings in my life. Okay? So with the arrival of him, my next 4 short poems, one of my other obsessions, in addition to mermaids and Bigfoot, are the 2 guinea pigs I share my home with, who happen to run my life. So this first poem is called Treat Time. Morning, noon, night. Furry round potatoes chew on cage bars. It is their right. Give us treats. We deserve some goodies. After a dose of vitamin C, out come the loud squeaks. Hay and veggies, veggies and hay. Guinea pigs may be small, but entitled little beings expect a normal routine day. So my life is around my girl's desire. I am thankful for Chewy and Petco, so the weeks and squeaks will cease. Then I can retire. Moving on, okay, mermaids and guinea pigs, of course. 4 guinea pigs scurry to the shore. A sea of mermaids marvel at the squeaking fur balls. Laughter erupts among the potato-like creatures. Human, fish, human fish. The calm sea rolls to the shore. The little furry girls look at each other and the water, full of women with tails. The mermaids wonder if these small beings are real. The guinea pigs expect treats. But the spirits of the air, those who have passed on, laugh, fly free, enjoy the scene. Tiny footprints in wet sand connect with ocean dwellers. Okay, next, genius. Small and round, squeaks of delight. She finishes her doctoral thesis with delight. Now Harvard calls, a professor of nutrition. Her dream job has come to fruition. A guinea pig as teacher? Eat your veggies, she yells like a preacher. So take precise notes. Listen carefully. Dr. Squeak's Hall is the place to be. And then the last one, which is definitely one of mine, the Queen. The leader of the herd am I. So long to wait for food, sigh. My beauty radiates as my subjects bow. Guinea pig is my species, not a mooing cow. The exquisite greens should be on a plate. Serving me is your happy and joyful fate. Squealing demeans my precious face. Give me carrots, cabbage with grace. Royalty does not linger for sustenance. Beauty does not need the skill of patience. I want my lunch. I am hungry right now. Get going, feed me, your gorgeous sow. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Guinea pigs, eh? You know, I'm not surprised that that's the kind of a pet you chose. They are so adorable. They're low maintenance. And they make the funniest sounds I've ever heard. So good for you, especially the guinea pigs and the mermaid. That's I don't think I've ever heard a poem with those two words in it. So thank you for that. All right, let's see. Sue Beth Carlson. Thank you with her mermaid hair.
Yes, I'm in the mermaid section of the program. So I think I got a little mixed up because I was thinking that serendipity is synchronicity. So my poem is about synchronicity. But just before we came in here, I found this quote. I think the difference between serendipity and synchronicity, I'm not sure, is that serendipity has an element of luck to it. And this quote says, "Luck is when preparation meets opportunity." Does anybody know who said that? Because I thought it was somebody modern. It was a Roman philosopher, Seneca, who said that. Anyway, so this is called Dance of the Roses. My introduction, as usual, is longer than my poem. My sister Rosalie passed away in July. Before my mom passed away and on their anniversary, each year my dad would give her one red rose for every year they'd been married. These two mothers are very much missed, especially this time of year. Shortly before Mother's Day, I'd been talking to a wonderful mother and our talented hostess, Donna Shear, about her singing Secondhand Rose. That same day, I saw a video of someone dear to me gracefully gliding through a clothing store he almost bought years ago and announcing its name, Secondhand Rose. At Mother's Day brunch, I was gifted red flowers from a mom and her young son. The marker on the flowers called them magic roses. On my way home from our brunch, I stopped at Paynes Creek and felt the ripples of water sparkling in the bright sun, melting the pain of missing mothers. It felt magical, like a summer's day in early May. When I arrived home, a bright rose-colored bird bounced toward me. I photographed it just as it was in flight from the arborvitae. How do you say that? Anyway, it was in flight from that bush right to my front steps, where it landed, paused a while, and looked right at me, and then moved closer, posing in a rhododendron right next to me. Are these synchronized and sun-drenched sparkling waters, resonant red blossoms, and this dancing, singing red bird messages from spirit, or the gift of magic roses? Perhaps it is all serendipity. So here comes the poem, which is called Dance of the Roses. Diamonds on the water, dancing with delight, exquisite fluid movement, things just feel so right. Reflections in synchrony orchestrate the dance. Is this meant to be or merely circumstance? Roses from the earth in serendipity abound, with second-handed song, rose-colored birds' sweet chirping sound. Mother's Day red flowers gifted lovingly I see. Red birds dance right toward me, prancing forth so gleefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue Beth Carlson. Beautiful as always. You know, it didn't bother me that your introduction was longer than the poem because they synced up so beautifully together. So that was lovely. And now we have a new friend, new to FCTV's Poetic license, Melissa Goodwin. Yay!
Thank you. Hello. Come closer. Okay, there we go. I can project if I think about it. Hi, I'm Melissa Goodwin, and I'm a writer, poet, and a yoga teacher, in case anybody needs a stretch. And I think after listening to the comments about serendipity and synchronicity, I'm not quite sure. I think my poem is a little bit of both. The genesis of this poem comes out of a year that my husband and I spent when we sold our home in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and decided to live and travel in our motorhome for at least a year. And we landed in Nova Scotia for about 2 months. And so this is based on my time there. It's called The Wings of Familiar Songs. I awoke in early hours in a trailer in Hubbard's Cove with the words to let it be whispering in my ear. I'm trying, but I cannot seem to stop worrying about all the things that cannot be known. I felt inexplicably drawn to the tiny Anglican church that sat in Gothic glory high above the cove, though I hadn't been to church in years. There were the usual hymns and psalms, and then a woman with tattooed shoulders sang Cohen's Alleluia in a voice that sounded like whiskey and cigarettes in the best possible way. The priest motioned us to rise. My legs shook. I felt as insubstantial as a wisp of ash that might be swept away on the slightest tremor of a breeze. The organ burst to life with a familiar song. I froze, then laughed, even as tears streamed down my face. Because in that moment I knew that help arrives on the wings of familiar songs whispered in early hours and calls to Sunday service when you haven't gone in years. And I knew then that I was not forgotten, not forsaken, because that day in a tiny church set high on a hill overlooking Hubbard's Cove, together we all sang, Let It Be. Thank you.
So beautiful, Melissa. Thank you. I've never been to Nova Scotia, but I can certainly visualize the church that you were in. I love the whiskey and cigarette voice and the tattooed shoulders and all the details that you put in there. But the whole idea of being saved by songs is something that I believe in too. So thank you for that beautiful poem. And now we have Mr. John Jackson.
From the sublime to the ridiculous. My name is John Jackson. My usual gig is limericksofprotest.com. Political limericks following the news, and there's one rather heavy news item from this past month that I would just rather ignore. I've written a lot of limericks. Many of them I cannot share on community television. But let's go with what we've got. Governor Noam stated quite plainly, she hated dog and goat mainly. There is no disgrace to shoot a beast in the face. You can still be Veep just like Dick Cheney. Though he holds the whole world in disdain, his appeal isn't hard to explain. The voters can relate to this hateful candidate are the voters who love to complain. Former lawyer for former president thought being served was unpleasant. Folks looking for Rudy accomplished their duty and gave him the worst birthday present. The defense has declared that they rest. The defendant, he did not attest. Did he think it was nice to take legal advice? No matter, it's all for the best. Whenever I look at the news, I read for good bits I can use. But this hush money trial inspires limericks vile, not the muse that I would first choose. They say brevity is the soul of wit. Here's a limerick to illustrate it. Should we favor brevity instead of just levity? Yes. Okay, change of topic. Inspiration. What's behind it? Serendipity is where you find it. I was cleaning out a file box the other day and came across some forgotten poems, including a copy of the first poem I have that still exists, written when I was 11. I will spare you that piece of whatever. I found a handwritten draft called Advice from the Giant River Otter, labeled draft, sent to my sister for her 39th birthday. That would put this at spring of 2001. Context must be I had a greeting card of a picture of a giant river otter. Giant river otter is an endangered species, lives in the Amazon River basin. It's the largest member of the weasel family, topping out at 1.8 meters. And that's as far as I'm going to go with that. When I read this, I am reading the voice of the giant river otter as pretty much my great aunt Janie, who was so Boston Brahmin that she wouldn't be able to pronounce the word bra in Brahmin. So, for your birthday we give you the giant river otter, who looks down on you with incredulous gaze. She brings you advice from South American waters, so you'd better take heed of all that she says. You are aging, said the otter. You'll have troubles aplenty if you think that you are as young as you seem. But you've reached that age when you're as old as Jack Benny. You must act like a matron, for you're too old to dream. Accept only perfection, says the giant river otter. Inferior folk reflect poorly before long. I should give you the advice I gave my own daughter. You may call this, if you please, the giant otter song. You oughter be strong, you oughter be brave, you oughter use all of those green stamps you save. You oughter be kind, you oughter be sweet, you oughter have dainty and quite narrow feet. You oughter be smile often, you oughter be pleasant, you oughter avoid being seen with a peasant. You oughter be clever, you oughter be bright, you oughter remind everyone when you're right. You oughter be thrifty, you oughter be clean, but you oughter have a maid, not a washing machine. So that's birthday advice from the giant river otter. I'm sorry, but she was the best we could get. Was not for her wisdom the reason we got her. As for her advice, she is always all wet. Thank you.
Oh my, oh my, oh my. Thanks, John. Fertile soil this week, I think, with a whiff of fertilizer in the political scene there. But you always come through. And I love the otter poem, Advice from a Giant River Otter, with a reference to Jack Benny and green stamps. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. And now the lovely Ellen Todd.
I'm Ellen Todd. Our resident limerick writer and I often discuss the month's theme as we're writing and gathering material for Poetic License. This month, it soon became clear that we did not have a shared understanding of the word serendipity. That sent me searching for a definition online, where I found the following. From the Oxford Languages, formerly known as the Oxford Dictionary, the occurrence and development of events by chance in a happy or beneficial way. From Merriam-Webster, the faculty or phenomenon of finding valuable or agreeable things not sought for. And from dictionary.com, an aptitude for making desirable discoveries by accident. Well, with that settled, I recognize the serendipity of some events in my life. I'll share two of them tonight. 28 years ago, I had a marriage that was ending under unhappy circumstances. Well, I can't think that any marriage really ends in happy circumstances, but I was devastated and taking a good look at my life, where I'd been, and where I wanted to go. I knew I needed to have some more fun in my life, so I called an old friend whom I had dated 13 years earlier, not with the idea of getting together, but simply to ask his advice about finding sailing lessons. He was also in the process of divorce and had just moved back to Massachusetts. After a dinner date and the passage of another week, we were both certain that this was a serious relationship, although it took us a few more weeks to speak of our commitment. Some of our friends were convinced that we were in a rebound relationship. After 28 years together, I'm comfortable thinking it was no rebound, but serendipity that we were both available at the right time. A few years later, we were planning our wedding. We wanted to celebrate with friends and family. Some of them insisted on that. We also needed to be frugal, so my mother and I cooked for weeks. This is not something I recommend most brides do, but my mother and I were accomplished and experienced cooks. We'd arranged for a couple of local high school students to serve and replenish the buffet and get dishes washed. But my mother and I were cooking for a couple of weeks. If you watched Poetic License 2 months ago when the theme was siblings, you may recall that my relationship with my sister has gone through some rough spots. Sadly, this was one of the rough times. She was angry with me, and I wasn't certain she'd attend our wedding even though she was invited. As Mom and I were deep into cooking, we needed something from the local hardware store. As we left that store, my sister was approaching the store, coming down the sidewalk. We could not avoid each other. At first, I stood by awkwardly as she and our mom talked. I soon realized this was an opportunity and that I might long regret letting the chance pass. Cooking together was something that often brought my family together. When Mom mentioned that we were in the midst of a cooking marathon, I asked my sister if she'd like to join us. She was delighted and offered to come a day or two later and said she wanted to come to the wedding. We were all looking forward to having fun cooking together, but luck was not with us. The morning that she was to help, my sister was admitted to the hospital with a complication from a childhood surgery. Not only could she not help cook, but she wasn't allowed to come to the wedding. Well, she convinced the hospital staff to relent on that. She did come to the wedding with promise not to eat a single bite or drink a single drop, and to come home back to the hospital when she got tired. I've always thought it was too bad that she was too sick to have fun with us as we cooked, but I was grateful for the chance encounter that led us to reconcile. I call these events serendipity, but I think there's more than chance in these happy outcomes. I didn't need to call John for advice on finding sailing lessons. I could have looked for some other way to build a new life. I could have allowed the awkwardness between me and my sister to build as we stood on that sidewalk. Instead, I chose to take the first step when faced with a challenging coincidence. I think I prefer the more active definition of serendipity rather than the occurrence of events by chance. I'll try to look for opportunities to respond to chance events that allow them to unfold in a happy or beneficial way. And I hope that all of you are also able to find serendipity when it's needed.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you so much. Beautiful reconciliation. And, the whole idea of cooking as being able to come together, I think is something that everybody can relate to. So that was wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. And now, Mimi Schlichter, you might remember at the beginning of the night, I talked about her art show that's on display here at FCTV. Welcome, 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 Mimi, for the first time.
Thank you. Such a warm welcome. So, the email I received just 3 days ago to tonight's open mic night read, "Come and share your original poetry, story, song, comedy, or spoken word in a 4-minute time slot." I was hooked immediately. So I wrote a quick, "Yes, please, sign me up" email to Tony, and I was in. You know how they used to say people's number 2 fear in life, right behind death, was public speaking. And by the way, the list has changed. I Googled it. Do not Google people's top fears. The list is now terrifying. For the days when public speaking was number 2 on the list. It never was for me, though. Offer me a microphone and an audience for 4 minutes, and I'm there. So the next question was, what would I do with my 4 minutes? I'm an artist. I paint, as Dawn so kindly already mentioned. That's my artwork out in the hallway. And I'm definitely not a poet. I used to sing in public, mostly in church, but I haven't practiced in years, so no, you don't want me to do that either. My bucket list does include perform stand-up comedy, except if you ask my friends, is Mimi funny, like comedy funny? I'm quite certain they would give you some sort of goofy look and say without hesitation, no, not really. But when I read the email invitation, I knew I needed to sign up. Spoken word. Sure, I could do that, and I have done it for the past year, twice a week, every week. I write and publish blog posts about creativity and art, and more recently, my travels in France. The platform I write on has a voiceover feature, so I record them from the comfort of my couch, often with the cat in my lap. She chose to stay home tonight. So let's just call the next 2 remaining minutes a blog post, open mic style. Next question, what to talk about? The invitation email suggested a theme, serendipity. And at the risk of repeating, some of you have already given the definitions, I'll read them again. Merriam-Webster calls it the phenomenon of finding valuable or agreeable things not sought for. A quick Google search defines it as the occurrence and development of events by chance in a happy or beneficial way, as in a fortunate stroke of serendipity. Like that open mic invitation showing up in my email on Monday. Serendipity. Say it with me. Serendipity. Even the sound of it is fun. No surprise, there's a brand of ice cream by the name. If you say it slowly, you'll get it. Serendipity. You did laugh. Or there's the name of that cute restaurant in the movie in New York City, a movie by the same name. Rom-com called Serendipity, out in 2001. It's another item on my bucket list to write a successful rom-com, a la Nora Ephron. But there's a problem for me with tonight's theme. The thing in a novel or rom-com story arc that would be called the crisis, the place where the protagonist meets up with an apparent unsurmountable hurdle. While I used to be a huge fan of the idea of serendipity, I must confess I don't really believe in it anymore. Not in the random good fortune kind of way I used to. Or as that definition says, the phenomenon of, I love that word, phenomenon, of finding valuable or agreeable things not sought for. It's no longer just serendipity for me. I now call all of this more simply blessings, gifts from God, who loves me more than I can even comprehend. Because that's how I roll now. And is also probably the biggest reason why my bucket list item of doing stand-up comedy someday won't roll. Because most stand-up involves a lot of swearing, references to intimacies best left private, huge doses of sarcasm and insults. A bunch of years ago, sure, I could have talked about all that, and I often did. But now they are all items I would call off-brand to my walk of faith. But that's okay, because tonight you all have allowed me 4 minutes with a microphone to ramble on about my art, about my blog, about my bucket list, and about blessings. So I will close as I always close out my blog posts. Thank you for reading, or in this case, listening. With love to each one of you, Mimi. Thank you.
So happy that you were here, Mimi. Thank you so, 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 so much. The whole idea of serendipitous events being blessings that come from God, I believe that too. That was wonderful. And I need to know how to access your blog, so we'll have to talk about that.
Artistreallife.com.
What is it? Artist?
Reallife.com.
Artist? Real life.
Artist as in ARTIST.
.com. Thank you. All right. Well, I used to travel a lot. I'm going to end the night with a poem. And one of my favorite vacations was a trip to the Galapagos Islands. It was just, absolutely miraculous. There were unexpected miracles around every corner on every island that I visited. And this is about a serendipitous event that occurred while I was there. It's called Conscious Contact. Seasick, I almost didn't disembark on Española Island, breeding home of the waved albatross in the Galapagos. But I had traveled there in search of magic, and I am, after all, a bird person. I climbed to the top of the volcanic landmass, see them, mostly in pairs, dotting the flying field, 8-foot wings folded, long lemony beaks, smooth heads, white, looking like innocent, bottom-heavy blimps. I seat myself on a smoothish rock near the edge of the sea cliff. One solo bird taxis on the flat runway, waddles widespread towards me on his cerulean legs, his coffee brown eyes on the prize. Rather than run to safety, spellbound, I held my ground. I will always recall the feeling of his strong, muscled wing as he brushes against my shoulder, launches over the cliff's edge into the headwind, becomes effortlessly airborne. Enchanted, I glide feather light right behind him into the blue Pacific sky. And that's it. Tonight's edited performance will be shown on FCTV's Channel 6, also streamed on the FCTV website, on YouTube, as well as via Roku and Apple TV. And friends out there, wherever you are, if you would like to be a performer on Poetic License, please join us. The next Poetic License is Thursday, June 27th. The suggested theme will be music, music, music. And a heads up, Jim, you better come next month. A heads up about the future. The theme for July 25th will be justice/injustice. Justice/injustice. You can sign up to be a performer, by sending a text to our producer, Tony Sedera. His email is tony@fctv.org. Or you can simply come to the studio on Dillingham Avenue at 6 o'clock the night of each live performance to enjoy being an audience member. Thank you again, Tony, for your awesome producing and editing. Thanks to our grand camera crew. And thank you, performers. How kind of you to share your time and talents with us. So, until we meet again, peace and shine on.